Hello everyone. Of today is behavioral emergence of future secular view of looking at our past. There first emerged a brain. That means before the brain there was nothing to talk about, it seems. First there emerged the brain, then there emerged behavior from that brain. And it seems that we are a biological instrument that receives the outer, what is in front of our eyes, and behind our eyes it becomes processed as us. So when a person sees their reflection in a mirror, the sight, the light of your vision is being processed as you. So what I'm trying to say is that we were behaving unconsciously, and then we became conscious of our behavior, and that's why we can even talk about what's going to happen to behavior in the future. Pretty much there's two sides of the coin to this episode. From one angle, I want to get into behavior and its significance and that we experience. I wonder about one human being that I have seen from the beginning of my life, myself, and I wonder about the emergence of my own behavior. When I look at the emergence of my own behavior, there's a world that is moving, there's a self in it. This self in the world, at some point I feel the psychology is making it equal to the world. That means there is a sort of ideological oneness going on in regards to the brain copy pasting the world first, then cookie cutting a self out of it. Because when you look at children's psychology, a child is not born with a personality; it is born with a body. Okay. So, a child's mind is the world. Literally, the child, if we think of ourselves as self-replicating, and this self-replication being an urge towards some sort of survivability, even on a cellular level, that means cells, when light beams hit them, we're trying to survive. Just like how human beings are a very complex grouping of cells. Uh, um, we respond to light. Our whole morality is like light and darkness, good and evil. When there's no light, when there's no truth, oh my God, it's like there's predators around. There's bad influences around. But it's suggestion of the inner realms and the outer realms, and how light and pretty much the on and off switch effect is echoing in the psyche. So what I'm trying to say is that whether it's a tiny cell responding to light, whether it's a complex grouping of cells, the human being responding to light, ultimately the survivor option, and it's being taken. Or there's a directive. It's like we're not just like hovering jello in this world. Now, the child's behavior is actually the behavior of a container for the teaching. What that means is if the person doesn't feel like a student, they will never hear the voice of the teacher. It's like the same thing they would say. It's like very similar to when the student is read logical systems. It's like I personally am a person who was raised in a religious environment. Uh, Iran, is a country where church and state haven't separated, and it's strange. It's like a country with 6th century laws, to some degree influencing it. But I'm telling you, so religion can't be ignored. Religion is something that, because in some countries it is entangled with the politics, every single member of that nation, sees a creator to the universe, but the issue is that creator's creation is being doubted. Right? So if people really believed there was a God moving this world, they wouldn't need to change another person. They wouldn't need to convert another person, because God is moving everything. There's no people here. You know? So there is this thing that on some level people in the religious communities are acting as if God is moving everything, but they are intervening in the translation of God's will. Right? So in one view, I feel the message of religion was not to become a religious acolyte of an ideological system that's foreign to you. It's as if like there's more than being a statue of an ideological system. We are creatures beyond language. If you don't realize this, do you know how many ideological systems are? So, sorry guys, got disconnected for a moment. What I'm trying to say is conversion in religion is blasphemy. This is the weird paradox. That means either man is acting like he knows God's will, or man doesn't. Right? In the religious sense, they say a man doesn't know God's will. Because man, and he says men made gods to tell themselves what they didn't have the courage to tell themselves, pretty much. Man created gods to tell himself what he couldn't tell himself, what he was too afraid to tell himself. That means the person has experienced love, but has collective love as a collective being, but they're too afraid, and they're like God's love, and there's that separation there. You see, this is the thing about life, that if it is just once, it's technically not this Aeonian battle of chaos and order. Well, guess what? You're going to be in the gears of the machine for unnecessarily. You're going to unnecessarily be a cog in a machine that was never you. For me, I'll be honest, where the other person doesn't know. Technically, it means to understand one another, means to build a third world. I've actually been sitting for an hour waiting for my slow computer to load the live stream. To a point where I can't even play music on the web browser to the side. So I'm listening to music on my phone while talking. But in this whole moment that I was waiting, in an hour of waiting for the live stream to start, so I've been actually sitting here more than an hour now, even though the talk's just gone 14 minutes. But I wrote it down a sentence, and I wrote down the sentence, a very unique sentence, which I feel is necessary to share. I wrote down, when the outer realms are not up to speed with the inner realms, the invisible flames of rage arise. The invisible flames of rage. That means I have noticed that if your inner realms is going faster than the world, you will get irritated. You will get irritated about everything. If your inner realms expect the outer realms to match its speed. For me, a blessed being is where their inner realms and outer realms are synchronized. That means the person has realized true non-duality, where it's non-duality of what was never there. That's it. So in some sense, we don't have to search for truth. We're being truth live. Do you know what I mean? We're being the living. There's a certain financial strength. Then there is just acceptance. That means there's actually nothing on this planet to suffer about. There's just endless feedback of how you have started the moment, pretty much. And I would say mysticism is resetting the moment. But most people, they just shut down their ideological self, and I was in this whole kind of passive meditative vibe where it's as if I didn't need to touch the moment, right? And I remember I had a conversation about my father, and I asked him, how do you see meditation? My father is more inclined towards Sufi thought and other schools of thought. And I asked my father, and he's a very educated person. I asked him, how do you see like meditation and monks? And my father's like, he told me that he saw these Tibetan Buddhist monks in the airport. At the time I was so in a Tibetan Buddhist mindset, I got offended. You know, I was like, Father, you don't see the depth they have. They're not just trees. Buddhists aren't trees. And at the same time, though, I suddenly realized another, like, it wasn't even then, I would say. Even like the idea, what my father said there, it was like a seed. And it was like years later I realized it makes sense that if you are such an advanced biological human instrument and you have the same output as a tree, you have technically not lived in human life. You have lived just as life. You have not lived as a human being. And so the metaphysics that escapes the human idea, that dismisses, that reduce, I would say not reduce, but for me it's like be human first, then be whatever you like. That's to continue. Energy can be used. There's different types of energy, just like how an object has a different potential, for example, of how it can move. We can say that when a person drives a vehicle, the driver is the most immediate energy. We can prioritize energy that is influencing other energy. There is this idea, it's archaic, but it's on a window that has rain on it. You know what I mean? Like all the smaller drops instantly join with the greater force, something like that. So first we study how we have emerged, then we study how our behavior has emerged from our physicality, right? So think of it this way, that the brain, or let me say it poetically, the soul was planted in the soil of the body. That means our physical body is in some sense like soil. Inside it there's a brain, the seed, let's say, as the unique seed of intelligence, where all projections of thought stem from, branch out from. So we can say the brain is in the soil of the body, right? And so when somebody, I'll give you an example. So when somebody says person A and person B are in the park, person B looks at person A and says, who are you? Now person A says, I'm person A, is spelled A-Y-E. That person, what I'm trying to say with that metaphor is that person A's answer is like the tree's branches. Do you know? But what person A truly is also the roots of the tree in the soil. This is why it's so hilarious that we feel a person is their psychology, they are an object and a subject, but it's that if we treat the tree analogy, brain is receiving a level of input, I would say, a level of input from how its body moves, how the body moves, but it's also receiving a level of input of how it moves the mind, and as the mind moves, the body responds to that movement. So we think that our eyes only allow us to see the outer realms, but our eyes are seeing ourselves. That means when you close your eyes and literally listen to your heartbeat and feel that, that's not something you can see, but you have access to knowing it is there. Do you know a person? It's like just because we see a person and we can't see their brain like in front of us, it's like, can you imagine? Can you imagine like someone's like, hey man, I got a brain, what are you saying? And you're like, bring your brain in front of me and then I'll touch your brain, and when I can touch your brain, I'll know you have a brain. I'll believe you have a brain. You know, and so the person's like, yo man, you know, impossible. So that's the thing. So many things are here that we don't see yet. And if all our knowledge is based on what we see for the human position, that is ultimately the task. That means regardless of belief system, regardless of if whatever ideological identity, like Diogenes, where he was asked, this a Greek philosopher, he was a bit crazy, but he was also a very profound philosopher. And so they asked Diogenes, where are you from? And Diogenes is like, me? I'm a citizen of the cosmopolites. What are you saying? And so that was his answer. He was a cosmic being. He was not a kind of put a language paint on your face and think you're, you know. If we cared about freedom, we would care about treating this planet like a tourist agency. That means this planet, an advanced civilization is going to really feel like everybody is an employee of a tourist agency where you're caring for 8 billion passengers. Or imagine this idea, we are 8 billion pilots. Why not? I'm saying this very generally, even though the idea has a sacred meaning for me. But the pilot means that you as a being, as an energetic sphere of influence on the planet, you know, because you're a part of this world, you're also responsible for yourself. So think of it this way: that's somebody was irresponsible on the planet, and somebody came. You know, just to finish off the previous thought, is endless. To fly back to the topic in the subtitle, I have written to give or not to give. That is the question, you know. And anyways, to give or to take, that is the question. Okay, to give or to take. I feel that's really going to define the psychology of the future generations. It has just been a response to its own simulation, you know. So I'm saying if we had no physiological issues, the whole give and take thing would pretty much be left on a different level. So we're giving and taking as objects, and our main currency is also an object. You know, so we're translating objects into another object, and that object we all acknowledge, right? And that's pretty much the economical sector. For Let me even share with you my personal strategy. I've come up with this model. I call it Civilization 2.0. It has 3 phases. And if we get to the third phase, more phases unlock. Now, the idea is that human beings, this is, I'm kind of moving into a different context here. I have this vision, just some guy, some creature, one human being in a universe of a billion trillion stars saying this, so just entertain what I'm saying. But 600 years from now, if there are certain great transformations that occur, there can be a strategy for human beings to indefinitely bypass extinction. So I found a strategy that our species can endlessly till the end, that's however long it wants or whatever experience it has with the planet, you know, it can endlessly, it can indefinitely continue as a biological entity, if it chooses to, you know. Up until, I would say, 3,600 years from now, where there will be a choice to be a creature, to continue as a creature, or to no longer be an object or a subject, you know. But the idea is that in Civilization 2.0, we build sky cities. We live in these sky cities, especially when so many human beings are being fascinated by technology, and because the speed of cyberspace is going to be faster than the outer realms, automatically people are going to become digital entities for you. It can be that you also lose it. You know, this is nature. What remains in your attention, what you care for, what you honor, walks with you in this life. What you dishonor, what you push, it will also push you. You know, there's some who walk in a way where the world becomes their ally. Why? Because they have seen the world first. So many human beings, their rage and anger arises from not being seen, and it's remarkable. You know, it's remarkable how much the inner realms not being seen is like the person feels the world isn't, they are not on the same page in the world, or the world is not, you know, the same book they're reading. As beings, we pretty much have choice. So truth is like the potential of the illusion, you know. And I feel, can you imagine our civilization getting so advanced that there is no longer judgment, there is just endless level watching? So that means it's like we take this view that we have, every person has a unique DNA, so no two people can be the same, or if they were, they would be clones. Now, when it comes to ideological systems, cloning has happened. Whether you look at modern or ancient religions, what has occurred is cloning towards a worldview. You know, cloning and ultimate allegiance to a worldview. That designed the character. And so, this gentle-natured character, right, was in this battlefield, and this like, it was like this Viking kind of setting, Japanese reanimation of the Vikings, you know. Excuse me. So, in it, this gentle-natured character was actually part of royalty, but was kind of locked in the inner realms, in his inner realms. Suddenly, this character, who his whole life was conditioned in a setting where they were telling him, you gotta be intense, you gotta be like a warrior, and you gotta be chaotic, or all this, you know, you gotta prove yourself. This character who was gentle-natured had avoided that, right? But suddenly in the battlefield, he saw that it wasn't to be a chaotic nature, that it was like human beings were killing each other over imagination. And yet imagination is an extension of reality. So they're killing each other over impatient ability to see the same inner realm view. So what happens in the scene is that this, like berserk, the gone crazy, gone crazy warrior in a battlefield run towards this gentle nature character, and this gentle nature character just grabs the face of this like bewildered character, right? That means it was as if like a tackling of the force of gentleness and the force of chaos. It was like literally seeing in that scene how order in its most simplistic state, it can't, like simplicity by nature cannot have chaotic outcome. Do you know? Do you know? So that simplicity can't fight chaos like chaos, but it can extend simplicity into chaotic dimensions. So what it was is the moment this character shows gentleness to a world where the cruelty had made that warrior go insane, that warrior just came down to earth. Right? And it was as if it was a war in the mind overlaying the actual circumstances on earth, which can endlessly be reinterpreted. You see, when it comes to inventing an object, that's very complex. That's why in my mind I clap for Edison. I also like, here I clap for him. But I'm saying like, but in my inner realms, that was the thing. Imagine being someone who's fascinated by the concept of being able to invent something, right? But now you don't have the resources to invent it in the outer realms. Every moment is an invention of nature. That's the cool thing. Every behavior is like an invention. What is an invention? You see a picture in your inner realms, you, in some sense, design the object in your outer realms, right? You make the subject into an object. You bring it first on a paper level, then you bring it into a three-dimensional level. But when it comes to your behavior, our behavior is also an invention of our response as an unknown witness to the inner known landscape, which is the inner realms, I call it. That means if there's someone still, maybe I have, overworked this computer. For me, the human being is the storehouse of knowledge in an unknown way. And we have teaching literally the future generations, the educational system. What is the task of life before death arrives? And that is why giving is the only way. You take, the species loses. And when I say take, I don't mean not. I don't mean you never take. Like as you're offered cake and you don't take it. Like I don't mean it like as a universal law. I mean it in the sense of the psyche's cobra-like emergence in the outer realms. Like in that sense of taking. You see, there's some things I have noticed. There are people on this planet that it's like objects can be taken, even ideas can be taken. But I will tell you, even emotions can be taken. And even more than that, even in some sense, I will tell you, there are, it's like I'll tell you the story that I can use. There was a very kind person, and the kindest people, suddenly they found the kindest of all person. you know, and they went to this kindest person, and they are like, we have searched all over the world, you are the kindest person on this planet, do you know? And then they saw the kindest person cry, and they're like, how could this kindest person not be kind to themselves? And why are they crying? And then the kindest person said, if there is the kindest person, that means there is also the unkindest person out there. And so this is why if we make the world only good, then bad will get a voice. If we make the world only bad, good would be the rebellion. So it has to be a multidimensional system, or we endlessly fight till eons over language that could never replace the direct experiencer that's journeying. Like, you can't know who you are till the end of the roller coaster ride. Excuse me. The tears of a broken world need to be used in so many different versions of nature. Out of curiosity, can the viewers hit me, or can the viewers hear me, or am I cutting on and off? Anyways, love is the greatest defense of man. Our species, if it has love, its defenses are strong. Now, what is the attack of our species? Our attack of our species is afraid, and it's asking this commander, and they're all, of course, going to die in the scene. And the soldier says, "Was it all meaningless? Is life meaningless?" The soldier's freaking out, and the commander looks at him and says, "No." You know, the commander says life is not meaningless, even though we're all gonna die. The meaning of life is to live for those who will find the meaning one day. That means we hold the defense. Doesn't mean we have the offense to figure out truth yet. Do you know? One of them's like a construction worker. One of them is like a, I don't know, like a landlord, angry landlord. And so, anyways, these are characters who they suddenly, once they're attacked, they all are like next level martial artists in disguise. It's like simple village people, you know. And so I feel like we are doing the same thing's going to happen in the emergence of an advanced civilization in regards to the behavior of the future generation. Advancement of communication. Right, so it's like we lost the honor. Like back in the day, people would have war, right? But they would also have honor because it was an intense situation. It was important to have some strong foundation to the movement, right? So now we don't have like the honor of the medieval ages. Like it's like my king, my queen. Right now it's like, you know, it's like we're trying to bring down things and we feel empowered. It's ridiculous. It's very childlike. It's like anarchy is being treated by a toy, like a toy, as free. Rekindled in communication, artwork, or the person in their inner realms, they use what is given. The human Homo sapien compared to other species to other species in the animal kingdom, do you know? It is like a Ferrari. They're like motorcycles, right? Imagine, right? So this Ferrari is what do you call it? This Ferrari. We are like a Ferrari being driven at 10 miles per hour if we behave in an animalistic, violent way. That just shows that the individual doesn't know how to use the 4.5 billion world realm. That strangely, you can say, call it the guardian angel technique in marketing. Let's call it that. What it means is that it's the idea of utter compassion. That means as if you're selling a product to your child, not to someone who's you're gonna feel like you made profit on. Do you know? That's the thing. That's the change. It's literally a human nature update in all the leaders of design currently active in civilization. If literally like there could be you know a monk, like a Tibetan monk, preaching compassion with a gong, just going around in like corporate cubicle halls, like that would be that would be the start of the renaissance of the inner personality of the corporate structure, not just the outer personality. Hey, employees of company such and such, amount of money with just a more positively inclined picture. And yet the negative is like, what? That's so boring. It's like, do we want to see 8 billion advanced human beings and see what that's like? Every person, imagine there's a like a hidden Einstein in them. you know so that hidden Einstein will only be activated if the behavior of the animal within is tamed before it has an ability to even be released in the outer realms. That means the person should have such an ability, the advanced communicator should have such an ability to communicate as the body, that if there is something, let's say you're angry and you want to punch the wall. Hulk smash the wall, right? So in that moment, your hands just go easily into your pocket, and in your mind, you're like literally Hulk smashing the wall. But in your outer realms, you don't let it release. And especially for the parents of the future generations, which are pretty much those giving reports of how the civilization is to the future generations, future children. The whole idea is like the person has to. So it's one of those things where it's like we treat ourselves as rats, we will feel we won't deserve more than rats. We treat ourselves as weak, we will feel we don't deserve more than our weakness. But if the mind was like, what if? If the person's mind one day was like, what if? Okay, so I've been exposed to weak versions of myself in this life, inefficient versions, incapable, foolish, arrogant versions of myself in this life. But what would the advanced version, not the good, not what I like, what I like or counters my dislike, what is the most advanced possibility of the human intelligence? And when you ask a question like this from yourself, I will tell you, you will become your own teacher at the speed of lightning. You will realize there was this quote by, I believe it was a very Tibetan master sage master. This very, I believe the name was Sogyal Rinpoche, but I could be wrong. It could have been another person, but I believe Rinpoche was in the last name, or it was Patrol Rinpoche. I don't know, but it was a Tibetan. We restore an advanced communicator's honor in civilization. I have seen this idea of advanced communication to echo so deeply, like kind of like imagine the first doctors thinking about like, yo guys, we need to have a building, to instead of like working outside in tents or whatever, right? So in some sense there was a hospital made, right, for the purpose of the medical practice. Now I thought about communication, right, and I thought about like that there's going to be like I have this idea, School of Athens 2.0, And I've sometimes titled it as the Hall of the Great Advanced, the Hall of Great Conversations and the Hall of Advanced Communicators. What that means is human beings, you can either move your body in an advanced way or you can move your vision. And moving your vision takes less energy than moving your body. This is why the mind in one moment has already used the energy of the body to simulate endless probabilities. Not endless, but they can echo. So when you use geometry, rational phenomena easily, a national being understands of, you can say, a kind of cultural levels and more simpler levels of the social system, eventually going back to the home and eventually going back to the heart of the human being that is being the light in the moment. Rumi, this poet, has this quote. He says, "Wherever you are, be the soul of that moment." That means for those people who thought the shaman was doing something spooky, it's like the shaman was living in a world where the divine was the norm. In certain shamanic traditions, they had this concept of the spirit realms, and the spirit realms was an interconnectivity and inseparability with nature's will, right? So whether on this planet people have had the idea of God, like as if somebody was like, yo, where did I come from as a person? And they're like, I came from other people. And the person was like, yo, where did the world come from? Oh my God, could it have come from a personality? And so we humanized that which was beyond human. And so I don't know if a message was extracted or a message was given. Whatever way, whatever cloud you choose to walk on as a god, your mind has a supremacy that only the unknown can teach. That means human beings learn from knowledge. Hilariously, gods learn from the unknown. Our eyes are gifts from the beyond. For me, I'm like, when I think about what I'm grateful for in this life, like it depends on how tired I am. When I'm tired, I generalize and I'm like, all right, I'm extremely grateful for just existence being here. In a strange way, it's as if, like, even though I have been in this life noticing human behavior, I've been watching like my own behavior as a human being and other people's behavior as a human being. I have also been watching nature, and I will tell you, nature is never scared. Events take place, but because it has a force of endless continuity, that means it's like life is building. That means whether human beings care or not, nature is building to somewhere. The forces are doing something. Like on another level, we can say the mind of nature is pretty much how our planet is being bombarded with waves. Technically, theoretically, be world peace, you know. So the thing is for us, and we see, but wait a minute, we can't change your mind. We can't have one agenda, one like Lord of the Rings style, one ring to rule them all, one ideological system to rule everything. Like, what is this show? It's like, the thing is, religions have not woken up from their own Hunger Games. Guys, I gotta make an announcement for people writing comments in the chat section. Of course, feel free as possible to write anything. You can write anything. But do you know that means it's like treated as an elder scroll that I don't know, my grandchildren will read one day. They'll be like, oh my god, you know, this was the chat section, like. You know, it's like save my face to my grandchildren, okay? I don't have kids, of course. This is really, I think, 200 years in the future, I'm imagining. Like in three lifetimes, maybe I'm gonna think of having kids, you know? Can you imagine, you know? It's like, when are you gonna get married? Yeah, maybe, you know, three. Sorry, guys. Somebody was signaling to me. Okay. Guys, I gotta, okay, I think 1 hour, 25 minutes, that's good enough. So guys, just a few last remarks before I end it off. So, behavioral emergence of future generations, to give or not to give. What do we do with the human psychology that on some level you need to take to exist as a biological being, but the mind needs to give to exist as an expressive? Their forces are separate, or in some sense, there is a unity. You know, either we see chaos unfold, or some order is given direction. You know. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on Discord for those interested, and anybody who has a question or a request on Discord, I can help you. The Discord server, it's just everywhere. You can find it on the link of any video or just the main page. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and care for how not only your behavior is emerging, but how that's going to justify the behavior of the future generations. Much blessings to us.